All right, all right. Thank you for attending another session of the Get Made podcast. I have, as you always say, I always say this every show, right? I got a real great show coming for you, but nevertheless, this one here is going to be interesting for sure. The conversation that's going to be held in this one is going to be something that I believe is going to be important for not only men who can be able to really identify, but a lot of you women, a lot of you sisters out there would then kind of have a better understanding about your man, because real talk, you really don't understand your man. A lot of times women be saying, men don't understand them. Well, real talk, you really don't understand us. But we're going to put you up on some game today, all right, about where we are, how we thinking, and hopefully with that information, you'll be able to do something with it and it'll be a little bit more peaceful. Everybody can be a little bit more peaceful. And so my guest today is an entrepreneur, community builder, family man, a jack of all trades, content creator, internet DJ. I guess that's what you call it, internet DJ. He does it all. He has a program called Soul Thursday. I happen to have the opportunity of being a guest on there a couple of weeks ago, and the show was fabulous. And he'll let you know how you can check it out. Calvin, why don't you introduce yourself for me, please, brother?
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm so excited to be here. It's nothing like sitting down with a brother, man, and just really chopping it up. And I discovered this about myself when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the barber shop and you're the young man and you look around and you see the brothers doing their thing. You see the body language. You don't know what they're saying. But as a young man, you want to be a part of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
ever since then, I've had this passion for men, this passion for brothers, and I'll be honest, we got some work to do, but I've never lost my love for the unique thing that brothers do, that brothers provide. A little bit about myself. I am a entrepreneur. I am a creator. I am a live stream DJ. I help others launch their entrepreneur endeavor, especially if you're a career transition person.
Mm-hmm.
I also host and founded a live episode podcast called Soul Thursdays. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm gonna tell you why. In sitting back, I've traveled and I've moved through different circles and met people through different circles.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was telling you earlier, Brother Clay, is that sometimes you look across the table and you feel like that person is different.
Mm-hmm.
But if you sit and listen just for a little bit and you hear
Okay.
the words in between the words
Mm-hmm.
and the sentences in between the sentences, you discover you're talking the same language. So,
Mm-hmm.
what we do at Soul Thursday and what I do from my heart is help people connect, help people tell their stories. And that's why I'm here today, because I want to talk about manhood, relationships, and this thing that I'm calling male loneliness.
Mm. Wow, man. I ain't telling. I think I'm not going to waste time, man, on this and just have some extra talk. I'm finna jump right into this conversation, but of course, first I got to get this Get Made podcast questions out the way. So, with that, first question for you, bro. What book have you read that's been inspirational for you, especially one written by a black author?
Yes, yes. When I begin to think through that question, a lot of books, ran through my head. I
Mm-hmm.
remember being on the yellow school bus as a kid, and I was one of those kids who would read the books, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize back then, but those kids was too noisy, right? I had one of them old souls,
Mm-hmm.
and I would read a bunch of books, Black Like Me, um, um, Go Tell It on the Mountain. But one particular book that stuck with me
Mm-hmm.
was The Invisible Man. I think that was
Wow.
what, Ralph Ellison.
Right. Right.
Oh yeah, that's a good book. That's a
That's a good
good
book.
book.
That's a
And
good
I
book.
had no idea what it meant when I was younger because it took me a while to get through it. And as I got older,
Mm-hmm.
I began to see this young man, this innocent man with nothing but hope.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, based on how the gatekeepers of the people would be may see him, they saw him as a little, in my words, country slow.
Mm-hmm.
And this young boy is just trying to go to college and live his life, and they just kept him running. So
Mm-hmm.
today, that's kind of one of the inspirations I pull from Because if you're not careful, if you're not aware, you can look up and discover that you too are an invisible man.
Wow, it's amazing, man. I was when my wife was watching a show last night called Paradise, right? I think it's on them Hulu channels or whatever.
Yeah, it's a new one that been out. I've been meaning to catch up on it. Keep going.
Oh yeah, man, it was pretty good. I'm not gonna tell the story, right? But it's a scene in there where the chaos is hitting, and the president is they making a move to get him out of there, right? But he stops and recognizes the janitor, right? And it's like he said, then he told him, hey man, I know you don't work for 9 administrations and this and this and that, right? And so it was like he recognized what looked like the least of these when
Hmm.
everybody else is supposed to be, high level, high vibrations, all this old type of stuff here, right? It was the guy who just taking out the trash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah, thank you. And so it's just he just taking out the trash. And so the reality of it is that a lot of times we might move like we're invisible, right? But somebody's watching, right?
Yes.
Somebody's always watching. So your next question: what black man do you know specifically who's been inspirational for you?
You know, one of the things that I think one of my biggest inspirations in life is my father.
Mm,
For as long as I can remember, I would see that man wake up early, come home late,
mm-hmm.
working hard, working hard, working hard. Far from a perfect man.
Right.
But what I began to realize over the years is that sometimes, no matter where you come from, no matter where you're born, your parents can do their best to give you the best they can
Mm-hmm.
based on where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the my father was actually my inspiration for when I launched Soul Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was going back home, and I discovered that he was drinking in the dark.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I knew what that meant, but it already taken me about 15 years to talk to him about other tough topics. So I was like, I'm not going to be direct on this one because I already know that's going to be an uphill battle.
Okay.
So I said, you know what, Pops, you ain't got to drink alone. When I get back home, I got to get back to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I'll log on, I'll play some music, and we'll have a drink together.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to just have conversations, dialogues. One of the first conversations was, what do you do when you come of age and feel a need to take management of your parents' finances or health?
Okay.
And what that really taught me was people was like, oh, that's a really good podcast. And I hadn't thought about doing no podcast,
Right.
but coming from where I came and what I'm made of, I'm like, I'll be that.
Right.
So some 5 years later, streaming every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern at soulthursdays.com, we've been talking about those topics that sometimes are hard,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pleased to say that I watched within that season 1 and 2, my dad began to come out of that dark place. And I was told when I was listening to some war, that slipping into
That's
darkness.
slipping into darkness. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I had heard that song as a kid, but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know that the person's mind was slipping into darkness.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my father has been an inspiration for me, not only because of the things he did, but
Mm-hmm.
my ability to see him as a human
Mm-hmm.
navigating our society and his ability to teach me the importance of hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. I'm gonna keep that title there when we tip over into our conversation, slipping into darkness, right? Because I think it's going to be important in this conversation that we're going to have, right? And I'm gonna remind I know a lot of my listeners, some listen to music, some don't, right? Just kind of religious preference in a sense, right? But nevertheless, I'm not listening to that song just for the group because I mean it's a classic, it's war, all right,
Yes,
a classic,
yes.
all right. But I really want because back then, them guys, man, they had lyrics for you. You know, they was
Mm-hmm.
telling you something. They was trying to tell you what was happening with them, right? And I would want my listeners to go back and listen to that and listen to the words of that song,
Yes.
right? And because that's going to be a focal point with this next question. What is your idea of manhood and an aspect of isolation, solitude, and where does loneliness sit in that?
Wow. I love that question. It gives me goosebumps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as listening to the questions, I'm hearing so many parts, and I just want to break apart the parts in my mind because you
Okay.
can see I can talk. So,
we're gonna be here. We're gonna be here for a little minute anyway. All right. So
yeah,
I want you to get that out.
yeah. So I hear a lot of that question. I hear, your perspective of manhood, and then I hear your perspective of, male loneliness, and then I hear, these things in my mind in our patriarch society, and I hear these things such as being a protector, being a provider.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I began to get hip to on male loneliness is when I was going through it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this internal compass that, all of a sudden, if something's not right, it just kind of moves a little bit like a spidey sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I begin to realize I'm like, hey, you're doing all of the right things. You're taking care of family, you're protecting, you're providing. But what is this void that you feel? This emptiness, like a black hole on the inside. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, get through it and move on. I get active, I do something, I lean into my passions, I start being creative, I create my content, and all of a sudden it disappears. So I just kind of move
Okay.
on with life. But it wasn't until I began to watch and I watched my peer group
Okay.
and I began to see this pattern. Good, wholesome men. The type that they help, they support, they lead, they solve problems, they pay bills,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, they're lonely. So I was talking to this buddy of mine. I said, dude, I've known you for a long time, man. You remember when we were in our 20s and we used to kind of do the thing? I mean, I said, dude, you were the life of the party.
Mm-hmm.
I was the life of the party. For me, it was temporary because I'm an introvert, but you
Right.
were the life of the party. Dude, do you realize that you ain't been the life of the party in a long time? Now, I ain't trying to, change you, whatever,
Right.
but I know who you are. I said,
Right.
we were roommates. Dude, do you realize that's a good big part of your DNA? And he kind of like, yeah, I'm trying to grow up, I'm taking care of life, got a family. I
Mm-hmm.
said, that's cool, that's cool. That's what I
Right.
see. And I said, I've been watching this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, who am I to say anything about what anybody do in their house? I'm like, dude, that's not me.
Right.
What I'm looking for is that internal fire that's in your soul.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we all go through hard times, we all go through life, but what we have to remember is that internal fire, you got to be able to keep it burning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I began to see black male and black male loneliness, is that it can happen where all of a sudden you live in life and you wake up one day and that flame is out and you don't know how to turn it back on.
Mm.
And the old folks, they used to sing those songs, "This Little Light of Mine," and I begin to think about what it means to let it shine
Right. Right.
and what happens when the life goes out. And they got new words for it. They call it resilience, they call it grit, they call it toughness.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, we got that stuff for free.
Mm-hmm.
But now we live in this digital society and people don't even touch grass anymore. So you just ain't guaranteed to know how to keep that light burning.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see black men, when I see loneliness, I'm talking about the good brothers who are doing the work. But some reason they woke up like my dad and they saw that it was dark on the inside. And not only was it dark, not only did it feel empty like a black hole, but they did not know how to light it again.
Mm. Yeah. And about what age do you think that happens?
That's a great question. If I can think through it, I think it can happen at a lot of ages.
Okay.
I know this 23-year-old man who he's going through it now. I know this 50-year-old man who's going through it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it all depends when it happens. And I think there's some seasons that can happen. Let me think about the young man. The young man, he wakes up and he discovers, hey, I'm looking around at my peer group and I'm just sleeping all day.
Mm-hmm.
They're going off, they're dating, they're courting, they're starting businesses, they're getting grad degrees, but I just want to sleep.
Right.
For the 50-year-old man, it's like, hey, I always wanted that executive promotion. I really believe I can help people. I really believe I can move the needle, but I feel like I've been stuck in this thing that they call this glass ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still pushing for that thing. And I tell my buddy, I said, hey, don't you realize, man, we let that go a long time ago. Well, that's his journey. He can figure it out.
Right.
But I think it can happen at different places. I think where it can really set in for no matter who you are as a man, because there's different seasons.
Mm-hmm.
There's the early season of college. There's an early season when everybody starts getting married. There's another season when people start getting divorced. There's another season when your career is supposed to be a certain way. It's another season when your money's not right. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it can happen at different ages, but I'm definitely curious if you want to kind of drill in on any ages because there's a lot of seasons to this thing.
It is, man, and the reality of it is for me, listening to you, and as you were talking, I went to thinking, damn, what age does that really set in though, right? And I was like, okay, and I had to look at my own life, right? And I know when I was having the interview with Chris, right,
Hmm.
and having a conversation, I called it crisis,
Okay.
right? And like every 5 years in my life was a crisis
Mm-hmm.
of some sort. So I had a dozen or so easy, easy, a dozen crises.
Mm-hmm.
Crises, I guess that's the word you want to call it, crises, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, and in that brings about when one can, because isolation would look like to me, it would be the result of something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And result of the loneliness, right? And or the depression, because I really believe that's kind of where it is in that depression, right? When I can't quite figure it out, when life just got serious, right? At 5, okay, serious, my toy got took, right?
Yes.
That might be something. Oh my God, they took my toy. You know what I mean? Get over it. At 10, okay, you finna transition from, like a little third grade, fourth grade. Now you talk about middle school action, 10th, fifth grade, on up. The subject matter kind of changes the way they teaching you, right? And then of course high school and whatnot. The social dynamics of things change,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and you try to figure it out. You try to figure what it means to be a teenager, and trying to you are not quite an adult. You're an emerging adult, and we don't even have that type of terminology back then, right? An emerging adult, but there is this thing that's going on in it that actually can cause the loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
which then will move a person towards isolation, wanting to fit in and don't quite fit in, and all this whole type of stuff here, right? Then when you get in your 20s, you start at 20, then that whole thing of, okay, I'm no longer a kid now, and I go to get it figured out, and I don't quite have it figured out, and I'm trying to work for these little small jobs if I don't go to college, and I'm I'm flipping burgers, I'm working in a grocery store, or I'm doing something that really a starter job,
Mm-hmm.
But then I want to do a little bit more. I want, because society's telling me I'm supposed to be a little bit more. I'm supposed to be doing more. I probably had my first kid, trying to figure that out, because now I got to figure out what it was to be a father, right? And all this whole type of stuff here. Even if I had one, if I didn't have one, I still got to figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then we talk about 25, then 30, then 35, then 40, then 45, then 50. Whole new life. So, it switches. 40 is switches. 50 is switches. God, man.
Yeah, it's real, and as you go through that timeline, as I was preparing for this session, I began to think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I begin to think about it, I go back to that light. Life is going to life.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going to happen. You know, as the man say, the only thing that's sure in life is taxes and something else, right?
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is that it's going to come. So as
Mm-hmm.
I begin to look at my young son and trying to teach him what I learned growing up at the end of a dirt road, in the country,
Mm-hmm.
in a community where on this 1 mile strip that it took to walk to the bus, there
Mm-hmm.
was different elders along the way that you could get in trouble by any of them if you
Right.
was slick with your mouth.
Right.
But at the same time, learning how to play basketball on a gravel road, it gave you something.
Right.
Because when you slip and hit your knee, you had to get up and keep playing because the boys were watching.
Right.
Well, the world has changed, and therefore our resilience has changed. We don't create campfires no more. I imagine there was a time they're like, you ain't no real kind of man. You don't know how to start no campfire,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? But we don't need campfires anymore because we have matches and electricity for today.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say, there comes a time when things change. My
Mm-hmm.
son, he's not growing up on the dirt road. He's
Right.
not learning to play basketball on gravel and a basketball hoop made out of a rim.
Mm-hmm.
But the consistent thing that we need is resilience because what you mentioned is very true. Isolation goes to loneliness, loneliness goes to depression, and not just any kind of depression, but the type of depression where you're surrounded by people and that light is still out.
It's out.
You're surrounded by people and you still got a black hole in your heart and you don't know what to do with it. So
Mm-hmm.
my recommendation for the people, for the listeners, is we all, men and women, and especially the men. And the reason why it's so important to men is that even in a fraternity, I had a good brother come to me. He says, I had a frat brother tell me, yeah, I know you're struggling, brother. I know you dealing with these family dynamics, you're dealing with this, but I need you to understand this one reality. As a black man, no help is coming for you.
Mm.
He said, wait, whoa, 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 man, I joined this organization. I joined this fraternity. I got all of these brothers. He says,
Right.
as a black man, no help is coming for you. Now, you may get lucky and you may get you some help,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't neglect it. You can't plan on it.
You can't plan on that. And this is one of the things that I really, you know, and I'm not diminishing women's, plight, black women's plight in a situation, right? In our life. I'm not diminishing that at all. But what I am understanding is that there's not enough emphasis given to men in that because they might say ain't no help coming for black women, but it's a little bit more help coming for you than it's coming for me.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely different in how our society has been set up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know men who identify as being a provider.
Right.
I know men whose identity they seen their dad for 50 years pay the bills and mom take care of the children. They saw that, so they feel that their job is to maybe use money to buy love, maybe use money to
Mm-hmm.
trade for love,
Trade for love. Right.
right? But what begins to happen is who gonna cry for the little black boy, as Antoine Fisher would say.
Mm-hmm.
And when you begin to discover, and I don't want to be morbid, but I'm just saying that's a whole
I
different
mean, this is a
perspective.
real conversation. This is a
Yeah,
real conversation.
that young men have to have because when you begin to realize that you don't get lonely, you don't get sad, you realize you don't just need a plan A, you need a plan B, C, and D.
Mm-hmm.
Because when plan A don't work out, then okay, you got to start a job, but what's your backup after the starter job?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you got to back up after the starter job, then what's your plan? And what I've discovered is it develops some sort of hyper awareness within you
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to essentially not only take care of yourself, but if you're fortunate, you can take care of others.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my aunt told me many years ago, I was going through this relationship. She said, son, I know you're really trying hard to take care of that woman. She says, but and this one I got humble because I didn't know this is my aunt. She was even book nerd like me, right? So she says,
Right.
son, ever since I've known you, you've always been a reader. She says, why you not reading anymore?
Mm.
She says, I know you're trying hard to love that woman and take care of that woman, but who taking care of you? And it was at that moment I began to realize, wow, this is my meek, humble aunt
Mm-hmm.
telling me you got to take care of yourself and being that great man that you want to be. Yes, but who gonna take care of you? And it had me shift a little bit and begin to realize things that I didn't realize. And to some extent, I was kind of not aware.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I thought, hey, if a young black man who worked hard and had a good spirit and good soul, if he fell on hard times, then people would,
Somebody wants
surround
to
him and be like, hey, brother, we
and
got you. We're
show
gonna do this
love.
with it.
Right.
And that does happen,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not guaranteed.
Right.
So when I went through that hard time, and my aunt gave me that message, I began to realize, I'm like, well, you got to take care of yourself differently than what you thought. But I'm going to pause for a second. But
Sure.
I love this topic. Like I said, it was nothing more excited than me than those barbershop moments as a kid and hearing men connect
Mm-hmm.
because there's some magic in it. And there's, I have no words. It just gives me goosebumps every time.
Yeah. But I'm gonna activate you. You on pause, but I'm gonna activate you. Uh, because the reality of a situation is for us as men, there there is no rescue boat coming. And if one happen to be coming by and we out there and they decide to throw us a lifeline, then we just really kind of caught luck in a sense. If we're basing it on this now, obviously, a lot of us who, and I think this is when I think for men, some men try to be a little bit more spiritual, right? Because that's always a saving grace, if you will, right? And but a lot of times we're not moving in that light from a spiritual plane. So what we do, we will find vices to help push us, help us dig that hole, if you will. Example, you found your father drinking alone. It was something on his mind before he even started drinking alone that allowed him to start drinking alone. And then it got comfortable, right? And what looked like isolation to some degree became solitude, but it wasn't healthy. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And so I'm with your research and everything, because I know you've looked at this area right here in several different ways. That's why you even here to have this conversation. This is just by chance. I just brought this person on and, oh man, let's have this conversation. No, you have looked at this situation, right? You have studied this situation to the best of your ability. So in my opinion, you have expertise in this situation, right? How how do we get comfortable? How do we become comfortable with then just sliding into it? What makes it comfortable sliding into it?
Well, I think there's a few things that can, let's call it the trap doors and the landmines.
Okay.
I think along this journey, once again, life is going to life, and everybody, start at a different place.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being in college playing spades, and I never was a poker man, but I love me some spades. You see, and
Mm-hmm.
as they say, you can't control the hand that was dealt to you, and we all
Right.
gonna get this different hand.
Right.
So you're gonna get your hand, no matter your age, and you got to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Your hand may have a divorce in it. Your hand may have, a broken heart. Your hand may have, a fire, a layoff, a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And for my dad, it was, he was getting close to retirement, and he would tell the story, hey, I've been working this job for 50 years. I don't understand.
Mm.
Well, small town guy, he wasn't aware that even though it was a honorable thing to have been working that hard,
Mm-hmm.
the
And that
world
law.
had, yeah, for that long, but the world had shifted to all of a sudden he was a liability instead of an asset, and they were treating him like a liability.
Mm.
And he, as a hardworking man, identified with that hard work. So as they say, somebody had moved his cheese. But
Mm-hmm.
going back to the landmines and the trap doors, they're all over the place. But going back to what happens to make it feels comfortable is your question.
Mm-hmm.
I think, kind of like you said, it starts out easy. You have a hard day. You got this young person who's promoted on the job. They barely know how to tie their shoes,
Mm-hmm.
and this person telling you what you need to do. So you go home and you're like, I just need a drink because I'm so angry. I just want to, do some. I'm just angry.
Right.
And you have that one drink. You have the second drink, and it don't have to be a drink. It can be a smoke.
Right.
It doesn't have to be, a cigarette. It can be 420. But you see, it starts out easy. But one of the things I begin to realize is that we all have to feel our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it started somewhere. He was upset, whatever, but then it led to the drink. I love one of the terms that you introduced me to is, what do you call it? Grounded manhood?
Right. Grounded masculinity.
Yeah, grounded masculinity. I love that because this is what I'm going to use to answer the question. Your term of grounded masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
At Soul Thursdays, we've done a lot of mental health shows. And so many that I've just got a whole different perspective of mental health. We live
Okay.
in a society, there's so much going on. People say you go to the doctor, they're like, well, I just don't know why black folks got high blood pressure. I'm like, have you looked around town? There's a whole bunch of pressure out there, right? The pressure out there is enough to give us high blood
Blood
pressure,
pressure. Mm-hmm.
right? So as I begin to see is that with all of this pressure, we begin to shut down and we don't feel our feelings anymore. We don't know we're embarrassed. We don't know we're angry. We don't know we're sad. A buddy of mine say a black man got two feelings, two emotions, a mad and a mad as heck. You see what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many more. I was looking, there's about some 500 different emotions out there, even more. But what happens is when you can feel the emotion, you can know what's going on with you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel it early, you said, I'm angry. Okay, what are you going to do about that anger? I'm embarrassed. What are you going to do about that embarrassed? Well, you can't cuss and you can't fuss and you can't do whatever. You got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it starts there because if you don't feel those emotions, then there's something about that alcohol, that smoke that's going to numb these feelings that you haven't and don't even know that you're having them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it starts there. I think it starts with not feeling your feelings. I think it starts with not being grounded in that masculinity. And let me define it how I hear it.
Okay.
There's a certain toughness out there that I was talking about where you just got to be tough.
Right.
But when you get so tough you can't feel nothing, then the surprise is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Because as they say, the body gonna keep a score. The body gonna let you know that you're upset, you're depressed, you're sad, you're lonely. Your
Mm-hmm.
mind don't know it, but your body knows.
The
So it's
body gonna
aching.
tell it. Right.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden you be trying to find something like a drink or something to kind of make that feeling go away, but you don't even know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think there's trapdoors along the way. So what I recommend to the guys that are listening, it's hard, it's complicated. Start with something simple. Feeling your emotion. It's like this, your old lady, y'all having a conversation. She say something slick, you don't like it. Ask yourself, what am I feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Am I feeling unappreciated? Am I feeling angry?
Mm-hmm.
Am I feeling embarrassed? Or am I feeling like I just need a hug? Now, sometimes you just got to go give your old lady a hug, even if you're in trouble.
Right.
But if you begin to feel that, then you can begin to understand if you don't deal with those feelings, something else will. And next thing you know, after you ignore these feelings, I got a good friend and she got this nickname and I love it. You wake up and you're emotionally constipated.
Oh.
You don't even know what you're feeling no more.
Right. You just backed up.
You're backed up.
Ah.
You need a what they call them colon what
Yeah,
them things, what they you know what I mean, to flush you
enema,
out.
enema, colonic, or something. You know what I mean? You just need something to go in there and get all that out.
Yes, you need something to get it out. You need something to cleanse that because what happened is you're emotionally constipated, and
Mhm.
next thing you know, you're waking up and you're lonely, you're isolated, and you're depressed because all of that backed upness, the body is going to hold it, even though if your mind don't know. It's a deep topic, but I encourage you guys to check out, Southern Soul Thursdays because we've done over, oh my goodness, over 300 episodes, over 400 speakers, and we've done probably about 40% of episodes on some form of mental health.
Mm.
And I'm gonna tell you why mental health is important, just so you know. Many people tell me, they're like, Calvin, don't you realize for a lot of us in the community, mental health is a luxury? We struggling. I said, even a soldier has to have mental health.
Right.
I was watching that movie, the new movie out where they take all the black women and they go and get all these million pieces of mail that were never
Right.
delivered.
688.
Yeah. You
Mm-hmm.
see, and when I was a young man, I never understood why mail was so important during times of war.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I learned. Mail is important during times of war because when you're out there and somebody throwing bullets at you, it's easier to get into that loneliness, to get into that dark place,
Mm-hmm.
and you just walk out into the bullets because they throwing them already.
Right.
But it's something about mail that connects you with your family, connects you with the people back home that let you know you're human.
Mm-hmm.
You see, even soldiers have to have mental health
Right.
because when that morale goes, then the war goes,
Right.
then the longevity goes.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we in our community, we dealing with a lot,
Mm-hmm.
you got to protect your mental health because when you begin to realize there's a psychological warfare going on anyway,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then you got to stay strong, soldier.
Right, for sure, for sure. And and that's been a taboo situation within the black community, especially with black men. Anyway, has been, I ain't want nobody shrinking me, or I don't want nobody trying to get all in my head and playing with my head and all that, but you in your own head. Because that's what we're talking about right here. When
You,
somebody
you
when you got isolated,
somebody.
say it again, boss.
No, I was just saying, you know, somebody got to get it in the head. I'm gonna tell you one thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I see these what they call these objections a lot, and they're so important
Mm-hmm.
because there's a little truth in every one of them.
Right.
It ain't like they making it up.
Exactly.
But one
Exactly.
thing I have to say is somebody going to get in their head. I was talking with a good friend, and he don't like therapists, and I kind of agree with him a little bit. But I
Right.
love his thing. He said, you know what? If a man and woman ever go to therapy, the therapist gonna choose the woman's side, and you just wasting your time, right? This is my buddy, right? Hey, change the name, protect the innocent. So
Right.
I said, so finally he was going through a hard time. I said, well, man, I'm gonna connect you with this life coach. And this life coach gonna do the thing, right? So he connects with the life coach, and all of a sudden he excited. He's like, Calvin, I ain't never seen nothing like this. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, man, she told me a few things. She says, one, have you ever been happy before? He said, yeah. She says, my goal is to get you back to that.
Mm.
She says, okay, what do you do to take care of yourself and be happy? He like, I don't know. I take care of my family.
Mm.
She says, no, I need you to do something for yourself. She said, what am I gonna do? She said, well, go buy yourself some clothes. She said, where you buy clothes? He said, Walmart. She said, no, I want you to go somewhere else to buy yourself some clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, what else do you do when you're happy? I don't know. She said, okay, I need you to take yourself out and do something. Like, what do you like to do? He's like, I guess I like comedy shows. She said, okay, I want you to book yourself a trip to the comedy show. Well, I ain't got no date. You don't need no date. Go by yourself.
Go by yourself. Right.
And then what happens? He says, Calvin, she hit me to this term. I said, what term? She says she call it what they call it what they call it, talk therapy. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
She said she hit me to this term, talk therapy, and I I love it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. She says all we gonna do is talk about it. She says, and all of a sudden he's went go on and on about talk therapy, and me, I kind of, I see patterns, and I'm kind of reflecting. I'm like, talk therapy. That
Uh-huh.
sounds like what me and the fellows do when we go to the bar, right?
Right.
And wherever you go with the fellas or what I'm doing at the barber shop, it sounds like some talk therapy, right?
Right.
I said, man, they got a new name for everything, right?
Uh-huh.
But this buddy, he was never the type to go to the bar. He was never the type, whatever, because he didn't drink whatever. So
Mm.
it hit me. I'm like, he missing out on the talk therapy.
Talk therapy. Right.
He over there, he isolated. He
Mm-hmm.
by himself. He
Mm-hmm.
ain't getting no talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
He one of them boys that get a girlfriend and disappear by 6 months. One of them. I
Right.
don't.
Right.
Remember
He
I
henpecked. He
call
henpecked. He henpecked.
him Peck. I call him Pepe Le Pew. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You remember old Pepe Le Pew from
Yeah.
Looney Tune? But that's
Uh,
Pepe a bad man. I mean,
yeah,
that's my
Flippy
nickname for
followed
my
that.
dad too.
Flippy trying to follow that. Well, what was it? A dog or something? I don't remember what it was. He
That
thought it
old Pepe was in love. He was a skunk, but he was in love with the cat, right?
was a
And the
cat.
cat
Yeah, it
was
was a
like,
cat.
something
It
ain't
was a
smelling
cat.
right.
Yeah, it was a cat. He's in love with the cat.
Oh, Pepe boy. But my point was, my buddy was not getting the talk therapy
Mm-hmm.
because he was over here chasing the cat.
Mm-hmm.
But I began to realize that sometimes as when we begin to break it down, it ain't nobody got to shrink your mind. Ain't nobody got to play games on you. You got to realize that you got to find your people. Just like I found you and you found me.
Right.
This is talk therapy right here.
Exactly.
And don't get me wrong, you can go deeper. You can grab books. You can grab life coaches. They can hire Brother Clay, or they can listen to a good podcast. But don't you take it for granted because slipping into the darkness is real.
Wow, man. That and again, I want to as we continue this conversation, I want everybody to understand that whole song itself. I really want my listeners to go back. For those who don't know it, there's a group called War. This group was like a late '60s, early '70s group, right? Dynamic band, right? But the lyrics that they used to come out with, and especially in this song right here, "Slipping in the Darkness," it's very important for where we are as really as people, but definitely as black men, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of us slip into the darkness, and we really don't know how to come back out.
You got to come back out. You got to light that light.
You got to, and once that flame burns out, then that man is ruined. And
Mhm.
can he function to some degree? I mean, he'll go and come, right, and he'll be in multiple relationships. He'll have deal with his kids. You know what I mean? He'll have to, because really he doesn't have it to give. Why? Because his light has not only been dim, but it's probably out.
It's probably out. And as we wrap up, or before we wrap up, I want to make sure I give some recommendations for the brothers out there listening. If you find yourself at a place where your light is going out, or you feel like it's dim, or you feel like darkness, you're surrounded by people, you feel lonely, I'm gonna give you some hints and some tips and some takeaways.
For
But I
sure.
just want to, because I love to do the call to action, because one thing
For
I
sure.
had to learn at Soul Thursdays is that we were streaming for a few years and we realized people were still on the front row of the pulpit and they were amen and they ain't had no changes.
They ain't got no changes.
Hey, I'm
Right.
like, what? I'm like, wait a minute. I'm feeling like the pastor, right? I'm like, y'all ain't, boy, the more I preach, y'all, you know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
begin to realize we got to take action.
Right.
Awareness is key. I love what the women do when they do that breast cancer awareness. What that means
Yeah.
is we now aware it's a thing.
Hmm.
So we hipping y'all that it's a thing, but you can't stop there.
Right.
You got to take action. And when we wrap up, I'm going to give you guys some hints and some tips of what you can do personally to keep your light going and to deal with that darkness if you're feeling it.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of dive into that though. To be honest with you, because I don't, I really don't like going like an hour and some of worth of just a problem and giving somebody 5 minutes worth of cure, right? And because I really want to discuss the remedies, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so people, because people can hear, oh, okay, but if they don't understand why this would work, then they're probably more likely not willing to engage.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a good point. So let me give some points. I want to try to take a holistic approach.
Okay.
And I know the listeners out here, y'all eating good, y'all living good, and you're holy, right? But I
Mhm.
know there's some people out there that's struggling. So I want to talk to the
Sure.
people who are struggling because this is the intimate conversation which you're having with yourself. So we're gonna
Exactly.
start. We're gonna take a journey of the people I know, and there's different people. I'm gonna build this list while talking because that's what I do. The first thing you got to realize is that your body is a temple, and nutrition is very key. I have to mention that, and I'm not even a nutritionist, but I'm gonna tell you why. I am surprised at the number of people that I know who eat out of vending machines or gas stations.
Mm.
And I began to wonder because I used to be one of those. I'm like, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, remember I told you at the end of that dirt road and in the middle of nowhere country, see, we were in what they call a fresh food desert.
Okay. Right.
And the closest thing to us was a mile walk through the woods at a 7-Eleven.
Okay.
Well, I don't know the last time you've been to a 7-Eleven, but there ain't nothing nutritious in
That's
there.
nutrition in a 7-Eleven. All right.
But
Everything processed.
there was nothing there, nothing nutritious there. Everything is bad.
Mm-hmm.
So what began to happen is that when you're eating from that fast food or the vending machines or the gas stations,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody that is easy for, and my heart goes out to the people who drive for a living.
Right. Truck drivers, definitely.
Yeah, if you own the go and you know you own the go,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention, man, because there ain't nothing good at them gas stations. That stuff gets your systems clogged up, and once your system clogged up, you don't have the vitamin and the nutrients to even keep a clear mind. So that's gonna be number one. Pay
Okay.
attention to what you eat. Throw in you some fruits, some vegetables. You know what I mean? I love fruit because it becomes like, I don't know, it was a dessert for me. Growing up for me, I still to this day, if I see somebody throw away a fruit, I
Mm-hmm.
just my body just happens, right? Because I'm like, good fruit and vegetables. Come on now.
All right.
Start now, fruit and vegetable. And you ain't gotta have nothing on it. You just, put a little something on it, but you don't need a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta get your nutrition right. Then if you're in the darkness and if you're sitting around the house, you got to get out the house.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get out the house. You got to move. You got to do something. For that one young person I was talking about, we're actually going to start him, and we're going to put him on an internship at Soul Thursday.
Okay.
And he young, and we're going to teach him marketing. We're going to teach him, branding. We're going to teach him, working with different people from different communities.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter where he chooses to go in his career, he gonna have some skills. You see what I'm trying to
Right.
say?
Mm-hmm.
And he gonna be doing more and have more options than to go home and go to sleep.
Right.
So you got to get active.
Mm-hmm.
Get out the house. I ain't saying you got to run a marathon, but you got to take a walk.
Right.
And when you take that walk and you begin that feeling, remember that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because that feeling from that walk is how you feel on a good day.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you want to remember that feeling because that's the feeling you're chasing. How you feel after that walk, your best self. You feel a little lighter. You,
Mm-hmm.
you feel your body. It just feels like, you're young again. Remember that feeling because that's the feeling you're searching for.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want that one just when you take a walk. You want that feeling most of the time.
Right.
The
You know,
next thing, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna hit you with something real quick with that, man, because and just from a personal standpoint, sometimes with being blind, sometimes is the we talk about slipping into the darkness. I deal with darkness every day, right? And so and sometimes I don't come out, and I'm working. I'm always working, and I literally don't leave my bedroom sometimes. Right, just working. I can be hours, man, on that phone and never leave the side of my bed, right? Sometimes, bro, the walls seem like they coming in on me, they closing in on me. And my wife, I tell my wife, look, I got to go. I got to get out of here. Just drive me somewhere. At least just get me out of here. You know what I mean? I've recognized that now because once upon a time, I would just let that just keep letting that get in, get in, get in, get in. And then I would be grumpy. You know what I mean? I would be, oh my God, man. And then I'd be depressed. And then I'm going through a lot of hoops and ladders, man. And I'm shoot, bro, I might need medication, all that type of stuff, man. All because I didn't walk out that door.
That's a real one right there. And it reminds me when I asked the question how we got here in our society.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about growing up, and one of my favorite images growing up is we in that rural area, and we literally had these big gullies, these big ditches that
Right,
you can swing across like Tarzan. I ain't making this up. This is real, right?
right, right, right.
And my uncles, they would go out there, they would, take a machete and they would, chop it. And depending on you live, you can see them tall trees and you see these big old vines that go up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big old gully. It had to be about 30 feet across, about, 40 feet deep.
Oh
And
God.
man, we would take that walk on the way to that 7-Eleven, we would stop and we would swing.
Uh-huh.
And we would stay out there all day just swinging.
Just
And the goal
swing.
was to swing to the other side and let go.
Mm-hmm.
and get to the other side. If
Mm-hmm.
you were young, the young folk would just hold on until they came back because
Right.
they didn't know how to,
They don't know how
swing
to
and
jump
jump
off.
like
They
they
know how to
did, right?
dismount. Right.
But what happened in our society is that, and I tell people I work in technology, but it's true. We got so much technology, we don't even connect as humans anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We there was we don't go outside. I've been playing putt putt lately just
Okay.
because I'm like, oh, this is a good way to reconnect, like bowling. Remember the old fashioned, it's not
Right.
old fashioned, but
Pull it out.
bowling.
Mhm.
But those things, our society, depending on where you live, we don't have it as much as we used to.
Mhm.
So we have to be very intentional because if we don't create those intentional moments, be like, hey, I'm gonna go and sit at the park today. Hey, I'm gonna go do some bowling. I'm gonna do some putt putt. If you're not intentional,
Mhm.
you can discover because I'm seeing this next generation. They've already got the numbers on Gen Z. So this next generation, Gen ZZ, that's my son.
Mhm.
I'm like, son, just because you see it on YouTube don't mean you can do it.
Mhm.
When we got all of these videos in our head and we think we know how to ride a skateboard just because we saw somebody on a YouTube riding a skateboard, this is a
Mhm.
different world. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it can happen to the best of us.
Mhm.
Even us, people, you may have these jobs where they want you to sit at a desk for 8 or 9 hours. That ain't no good for you. That's not how we were created as humans. That's not who we are.
Mhm.
But definitely catch those things. And let me wrap us up with two more things that I think is important.
Okay.
Going back to how you get yourself good, started on this journey.
Mhm.
One of the things that I began to realize when I was watching my dad is that he didn't have any hobbies.
Mhm. Okay.
And I thought back to the old fashioned days. I said, Grandma had all kinds of hobbies. She had chickens, she had land, she had a garden.
Mhm.
And I didn't think much about it because, the chickens, they would do so much and the garden would do so much. But that kept her active. That kept her outside. You had to check on the chickens. You had to feed the chickens. You had to move the soil. You had to prune. And that kept us active.
Okay.
And my dad now, as he gets older, he's like, man, I don't understand why, you know, my friends look at me like, how you 70 years old, but you still out here working 12 hours a day, 6 hours, 6 days a week.
Mhm.
And I said, Pops, that's your blessing. You must understand that you are being active. I gave him an Apple Watch and he clocking 30,000 steps a day on a slow day.
Oh wow.
And the rest of us, we struggling to get 5,000 steps.
Exactly.
So he don't know, but now he knows. 'Cause I told him, I'm like, Pops, stay active. Retirement don't mean you sit down. Stay active.
Mhm.
So that goes back to that point. But going back to individuals, I want to wrap this up because I can talk. Point number 5, I think is what it is that hobbies, hobbies, hobbies. Why hobbies important? It's not the first world hobby that you think I'm referring to.
Mhm.
It's a hobby always is supposed to connect to your inner joy and your heart. Hobbies. I ain't talking about my hobby. I ain't talking about his hobby. I'm talking about your hobby.
Hobby. Mhm.
Your hobby connects to that thing you love the most. You know that thing you just do for hours and hours and hours and don't even know you're doing it?
Mhm.
But some people can be reading a book. Some people is writing a book. Some people is working that garden. Some people is taking a walk. But we got to get back. And I get it. It's hard. We work a lot. We have to work a lot. We trying to make enough just for the city. But you got to figure out what brings you joy.
Mhm.
And they call it self-care and other things, but I'm just trying to make it custom to you because only you know what makes you happy. Only you know what makes that light shine.
Mhm.
Find your hobby, reconnect with your hobby. I got back into DJing because I started that in high school because my uncle had DJ equipment. And some old DJs, they were hating. They're like, oh, he ain't no real DJ. He a podcaster. I'm like, okay, I'll be that. But they didn't realize I've been in the game for a while. So I went back to some old Bobby Womack.
Mm.
You know what
Oh
I mean?
wow.
I went back
You
to
own
some
it now.
old,
If you think you own it now.
what's that, Memphis? I went back some old blues music. That's why we call
Uh-huh.
it Southern Soul, because it was a music that my dad would listen to, you
Mhm.
know. So when I went back, that stuff gave me joy. So when
Mhm.
I'm playing music, I ain't just out here trying to make you dance. I play that music to give you the soundtrack of life.
Mhm.
But find your hobbies, find your activities, and remember, life is gonna happen. That light gonna go down, it's gonna dim, and somebody gonna splash you with water. But only you know how to keep that light burning.
Wow. Wow. Great tips, man. Those are some spectacular tips. And so just like you, bro, I can talk all day. I can be here all day. So what I want to do is allow you to tell people how to find you. You know what it is you may have going on within the next couple of weeks with your programming, and we're gonna wrap up with that.
Yes, well, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, brother Clay, for connecting. It's always good to sit down and chat with you, man. I know I'm looking forward to having my son. I'm launching a podcast with him.
Hmm.
It's called what's it called? Hoops and Laughs with Dad and Tyler.
Okay.
And the benefit of it is, he's a young man, but helping him find his voice.
Hmm.
So he wants to talk basketball, so we got to get you on there so we can talk basketball because I know you got a whole bunch of thoughts about basketball. As for where you can find me, you can find me in a few places. You'll catch me online at soulthursdays.com. You can do a soulthursday.com. That's going to take you to our online community. That's soulthursdays.com with an S. That's going to take you where you can register for our next show. Also, we've launched a new podcast called State of Black Man. I've always loved me some black girl magic. I mean, come on. A wise man once says, like, I love women. They charming, right? I
Right.
find them charming.
Right.
And I love that. Love Struck, quote from Love Struck.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the movie. But I say this to say what I begin to realize is that the sisters have been doing hard work, highly educated.
Hmm.
The sisters have built community with their 92%. And if the sisters say we all gonna get PhDs, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna
Right.
all get PhDs. So I'm like, we gotta study the sisters and understand what we need to do to take care of each other, to
Hmm.
move in unison, to move as a community, to love each other,
Hmm.
to make room for each other, to
Right.
realize two black men can be in a conversation, be on different topics,
Hmm.
different ends of the spectrum. But you see, we got respect, and that respect allow us to hear each other. You
Hmm.
see, so one thing we do at Soul Thursdays is that we just talk about life. And what I discovered is a lot of times that there are women in the audience, and people will say, "Well, Calvin, what about the guys?" I'm like, "Well, the brothers, they over there." So I said, "Well, you know what? I can't keep saying that." Black Man Pod. So if you want to check us out, you want to register for our next upcoming State of Black Man. We film live every Thursday. I mean, first Thursdays on Zoom. If you go to blackmanpod.com, that's where you can register. And I got to give you this next show we're going to be doing. It we're so excited. I've never been a political person, but if you live during these times, if you ain't political by now, then you got to check your heart rate or something because there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on right now.
So we kicking off this new segment, and what we're trying to do is create a space where people can share their deep-seated emotions and feelings about what's going on in our society right now. But we got to work for it. You can't come up in there politicking, signifying, acting like yours is better than the next man. Come on, we've been there.
Right.
We have to realize having good ideas ain't enough.
Right.
Having 10% is not enough.
Right.
Having my elite crew ain't enough.
Hmm.
You see, community, community, family, family. So
Hmm.
what we're going to call this is politics and poetry. Check
Okay.
us out at Black Man Pod for our upcoming episode of Politics and Poetry, where you can give us your deep hearted thoughts and feelings about what's going on in our society, but you must use an artistic form and put it into some form of poem, poetry, or spoken word. And we're looking forward to hearing from you guys
Hmm.
about the state of our society today.
Wow, man, I'm looking forward to kind of catching in on that myself, to be honest with you. So, again, Calvin, thank you, man, for really coming in. Blessing my audience with this information. I'm sure there's a lot of takeaways in this. I know my wife is chopping at the bit on how she's gonna cut this thing up, and you make shorts out of it. You know what I mean? So we're definitely looking forward to that. And so, with that, everyone, thank you for tuning in. This has been a great opportunity to really just share with you guys. That's what I love to do. Of course, at the Get Made podcast, MADE is an acronym for Manhood, Accountability, Development, and Enrichment. We're building manhood, demanding accountability, promoting development, and providing tools for enrichment. That's what we do here at the Get Made podcast. And we bring in a variety of different Black men. It's not all about the most famous person or the so-called influencer. as it is about people who are affluent, right, and who have some knowledge that we can just walk away with. You could also please subscribe to my YouTube channel at the Get Made Podcast on YouTube. Of course, y'all can follow me on platforms. Just look at Hassan Clay Experience, the Hassan Clay Experience on Instagram and on TikTok. Also, check out my new book. You know, I'm thanking everyone who's been purchasing this book. It's been interesting. It's a lot of love been coming back to me as far as the book is concerned. Taming the Storm, Understanding and Overcoming High Conflict Personalities for a Peaceful Life. It's been great. It's been great. I really appreciate the love that's been given back. So until then, of course, every Monday at 7 p.m., check us out. Put on your notifications on Facebook with Hassan Clay and on YouTube at the Get Made Podcast. Put on your notifications so you know that this is coming your way.